On this video, I would like to do a brief inductive grammatical study, and I'm looking at Genesis 1:1. I'll be reading the Hebrew, followed then by a vocabulary list, and then a basic comments at the end of that. So we begin, and I'm teaching it directly from the text, and we might call this the first lesson. And we'll see how it goes. Bereshit bara Elohim et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. As we look at the vocabulary, be is the preposition in. Reshit is a noun meaning beginning. Bara is a verb meaning to create. Elohim is a noun meaning God. Eight is the sign of the direct object. It's non-translated. Then ha is the definite article the. Shemayim is the noun. It's a dual plural in the ayim ending. Ve is the conjunction and eretz is a noun meaning earth. So in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. As we look at a brief discussion of grammar, we begin with Bereshit, which means in the beginning or at the first. Be is the preposition with the shavah and the noun reshit following. Notice in the be we have a dot. This is called a dogish lene. You find it makes the bait hard in pronunciation. You find that dogish is what is called, and especially the dogish lene, in what is called the Bagat Kafat letters. The bait, the gimel, the dalet, the kaf, the pei, and the tav. When they begin a new syllable, or at the beginning of a word, you will have that dot sign, looking at a hard pronunciation. Instead of ve for B, it's be. Notice there is a shavah under the bait. That is because we are hurrying to get to the last syllable, the sheet at the end. Bereshit bara. So Bareshit becomes Bereshit as we're hurrying. So we're shortening that first vowel to a shavah. Bara is a verb. It's a simple stem called a cow. Some grammarians would call it a G stem, a Grundstem, the ground stem. It is a cow perfect, third masculine singular from the root bara. Notice there is a final aleph in the root. I would suggest learning the alphabet first and then having an open Hebrew Bible to follow along. This is called a lamed aleph verb, meaning that the aleph is in the final or last position. In Hebrew, the verbal system is determined often by pa'al, by the verb to do, by the pei, the ayin, and the lamed. Verbs that begin with a word under the pei are called a pei type verb, like pei-nun, like natan, if the nun is the first consonant. Verbs that end with an aleph are called a lamed aleph verb because in the lamed position, or the final position, there is an aleph, like bara. Most verbs in the perfect have a kametz followed by a pathak. Here we have a pathak or a kametz, pathak. The reason, or we have a double kametz, kametz. The reason is that the aleph, being quiescent, prefers a full kametz instead of a shorter pathak. Remember, a has a long and a short. And it's good to learn those signs. So we have the long kametz, the long a vowel, because the aleph prefers a full kametz before it, because it's difficult to have what we would call a closed syllable. And therefore, we have the long a vowel. Elohim is the next word. Notice Elohim is a noun. It is a masculine plural noun with the im ending. This is a the im shows masculine plural. Ot would be feminine plural. This is a plural of majesty, showing the fullness of God, allowing, I believe, for the later revelation or progressive revelation of the Trinity, the Godhead, three distinct persons making up the Godhead, and yet one God. And so the verb is in the singular. And then eight is the sign of the direct object, followed by the noun ha-shamayim. Here in ha-shamayim we have the hey preceding the word shamayim. This is the definite article. And notice under the hey we have a pathak, followed by a doggish forte in the sheen. That means a doggish, that dot, showing a doubling. And historically, what would have happened? The article normally had a hey followed by a lamed, how. So how shamayim became ha shamayim, where the lamed has assimilated into the sheen, causing a doubling, and hence the pathak, so the short vowel in a closed syllable. Ha-shamayim becoming ha-shamayim. And so all of this then is why we have the pathak followed by, excuse me, followed by the doggish forte in the sheen. Notice we have ayim, which is a dual ending, showing duality in Hebrew. Excuse me, please. The eight, the, is the conjunction, and eight is just the sign of the direct object again. You do not translate it. It just shows the direct object. And then ha'aretz. Notice the hey here has the definite article, but it has a long comment rather than a short a pathak vowel. The reason for this is that the aleph cannot take a doggish forte like how, so the lamed dropped out. And so the lamed, having historically dropped out, it causes what grammarians call a compensatory lengthening under the hay, moving from a pathak to a kametz. Notice also in ha'aretz, since this is the final word, the accent that normally occurs at the end of a word goes to the next to the last syllable, and hence the vowel is lengthened from a segol, eretz, to aretz. because it is in pause in the next to the last position of the word. So Bereshit bara Elohim et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Just in terms of a brief comment, there was no birthing of gods here. God is alone and simply creates the world. This is in sharp contrast to the Babylonian account of creation called Enuma Elish, where Apsu and Tiamat, the male and female water deities, merged together to form a theogony. What a difference between the biblical account and Enuma Elish. And also, as a Christian minister, I would like to say a concluding word from John 1. In the beginning was the Word. In arche ein halagos. In arche apoiesin is the reading of the Septuagint. In the beginning, God made the heaven and the earth. In arche. So for Bereshit, in arche was the reading beginning the Septuagint. And I believe John the Apostle is thinking back over this text when he says, in the beginning was the Word. And the Word, of course, is Christ, because the next verse will say, and God said, Vayomer Elohim. And so the Word is God speaking. But one other point needs to be made. The word in John, the Logos, in arche ein halagos, some believe has to do with sort of like a reason whereby God created the world. However, the word Memra is an Aramaic word for word used in the Targum, and the Jew, which is the Aramaic translation of the Hebrew Scriptures. And I'm thinking John is thinking of the Memra, and because in the Targum it will read something like, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, and the Memra said, that is God. So they're used interchangeably, Memra and God. And I think that's what John is getting at when he says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was face to face with God, and the Word was divine. The Memra, another way of showing the divinity of Christ, the Logos, in the mind and writing of the Apostle John.